Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's get started. Hi, this is Ray Lutz with Citizens Oversight, and we have a few people online. We want to get started. I know there's been some people who have gone out to see the current state of affairs. But first, before we get started, I'm going to stop share here for a second and let Emily talk about what you've got going with your election scrutineers. Let me go ahead and, yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Thank you for inviting me to do that. So scrutineers, which is, you can find at scrutineers.org, and it's, I can, well, I guess if I put it into the chat, people won't see it on the recording, and everybody that's on the call live already is a member. So it is, I'm going to spell it, scrutineers.org, is a new online community of people who want to do election protection work and people who are already doing election protection work. So both working on voting rights and on election security issues. And it's a place where we're bringing together the people who already have been working in this field for a while and understand what needs to be done, with the people who care about the elections and are concerned about the accuracy and lack of transparency in the elections, who are concerned about voter suppression, etc. It's a place where folks who are new to these issues or to working on them can learn what they can actually do to make a difference in this election. So the idea is learn about the projects that are going on to provide public oversight to elections, understand what you need to of background information so that you can go out and make a difference, and then learn exactly what's needed. So anybody can join, and we do have a $1.99 membership processing fee, and that's basically to keep bots out, and so we can make sure it's real people who are joining. It's a one-time fee. And it's a place that you can get trained, you can connect with people in your area, and see the latest calls to action from organizations that are participating.
So what are the things that you're targeting in this election, Emily?
So we are just getting started, and right now what we want to be mobilizing people for is to do photographing or videotaping of poll tapes on election night or the next morning. And we're doing that in conjunction with Democracy Counts and Smart Elections. And also we want people to be doing monitoring, like what you're training people to do. And that's part of why I wanted to talk with you about getting the trainings that you're creating into the community so people can see them there and understand what they can do to monitor before, during, and after elections. Okay. Those are a couple of the really big things we're doing. Also really encouraging people to help especially in states where there's targeted voter disenfranchisement, to help get people registered and re-registered, to help counter misinformation that's out there, and help people get to the polls. I'd also like to see a lot of people, and this is, we're just getting started with this project, so we're not organized to do this yet, but I think one of the things that we need to have happen is for people to be watching at polling places all over the country to help keep people safe who come to vote.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing that you can do right now, and maybe some of the people can already be out in the field, Harvey Branscombe, who is a guy from Colorado, actually happens to be in San Diego right now, has been doing a pretty good job. Yesterday, he visited the early voting sites in San Diego and actually picked up on some stuff going on at the one site where I think it was either 30 or 60 votes were mistakenly programmed into the wrong precinct, and then they had to rush those back and correct things. So they're going to have to maybe get those voters to come back in and vote again, something like that. It's really a mess. it has to do with the numbering scheme that they were using. But so this early vote thing, I went out myself and looked at some of the new Dominion machines that they have here, which make the ballot mark device, you know, little sheets, which they then carry to the central office. So one of the really important things this year is going to be making sure that we can follow those. And this is in San Diego, and I don't know about other areas. I know a lot of the counties in California have upgraded their equipment. And
if you can call it that.
Yeah, well, it's in San Diego, it was really, really a big upgrade. Now, I'll just, as an example, and this will clarify some of these things, let me share my screen over here. This was actually a project that we did, and I'll try to do what you said, Emily, in terms of trying to get people involved in what you're doing. So I think it's a fantastic project. Here is really kind of explains the example. As you look at this screen, you see, now this is from, I believe it was 2010. And you see precinct 0002. Well, that's the sequence number. And that's the number that they use internally in San Diego to represent this precinct. But then the actual number is this 1051010. This is like the first precinct in the list, pretty much, that we. So okay, let me back up a second. What this project was is similar to what you alluded to, which was we, after the fact, we went into the room with all of the basically huge shelf unit on the wall, and we got the polling tapes for each precinct that we went through. In our 5% sample, we had 85 of these, and this is an example of one of them. And then so you can see, let me just open this in a new tab. This is and I guess I'll have to rotate this. This is an example of the polling tapes that we were up against, and they were really pretty bad. So this is, okay, this was 08 when we did this. And the problem was, yeah, we went through these, and then we had to hand, for each contest, we had to hand enter these numbers and things, because we just didn't have the capability of like automatically recognizing any of this. So these are really 3 precincts at a time here. Here's precinct 1, sequence 1, here's 2, and here's 3. Okay, and then here's the date, time and the date, and then so I guess this is the other number, but this is the real number, 105000. That's the Rancho Bernardo precinct, and that's the precinct number. And just to quickly look at this, this was back when we were looking at McCain, Palin versus Obama, 2008.
Ray, 2 quick questions. One is, did you turn the recording on? Oh, I can see now that it says that. Sorry. And,
yeah,
and you're showing us this, but can you give us the context of what it is you're trying to illustrate?
This is like the polling tapes that you mentioned. Like, if people, at least with this equipment, this would be the kind of tapes that were available in our area until very recently, until this year.
Okay.
And so if they were, and I used to do this, try to get these, you know, look at the polling tapes, but they don't post them on our, you know, they don't post them on the front of our door or anything like that, because they don't actually scan them until they bring all the ballots back into the central office. So these poll tapes were created in the central office. And I guess I'll show you a picture of that maybe if we get on. But this is what the polling tape looks like. Again, these are 3 polling tapes side by side, and we just would put them on the scanner, and then you know, pull them across, and we get as much as we can on there. Oops, kind of slid that one off there, down to the end. And then here, finally at the end, you see the signatures of people saying that, but what we would have to do is manually pull these numbers into kind of like a spreadsheet. It was a lot of work to look at these. And then we did some work on trying to find out, you know, essentially at the top here, you see that there's 235 ballots cast. Here's 257, and here's 214. So one of the key things that we wanted to make sure was that all of the ballots made it back in, and they were correctly scanned, you know, they made it through the scanning process, and that we could see that for this precinct in the final like tally, we should see the same 235 coming in. And what we found was that, yes, this number is what they actually scanned. This is not the number of people who actually voted. This was a number scanned. So let's look at the sign-in roster. This was the other thing. So they have these paper forms, okay, at the precinct. And again, if we look here, we should see, here we go, Rancho Bernardo. Well, it got cut off there. See, it's 1051010. So that was the, so this is like, all right, so if somebody comes in with their, they get check marked here, that means that they came in and voted correctly. And but the mail was that they're a mail voter. So we had to go through this list and try to find and add these up and figure out if they, how many people voted. You see what I'm saying? So what we found was that there was about a 6% loss between the numbers on these sheets here and the number that came in. So let me go back to where the top level here. So the Canvas report, let's look at that for this. This is what was in their file that we took out here. And then we can see that for this precinct 105010, and this is that Rancho Bernardo place, and hopefully you can see this okay. This top part is just the sort of the summary, and they say the total number of ballots were 557, and the polling place had 275. 275 ballots were, this was after they were at the end of the whole process. So now what, I guess I need to duplicate this again so I can go back one. If we look here, so the number voted, this is 259 voted, counted by the poll workers from the ballot statement. So what is the ballot statement? Okay, so we were not allowed to scan the ballot statement because they just didn't let us do it. But so we had 259 that voted. This is the part that they had trouble adding up. Then how many ballots were unused? 229. How many were provisional? 18. How many were spoiled? 3. Then the total was 509. They received 510. And so the total poll ballots voted plus provisionals was 277. They had 278 signatures that didn't match. And in the Canvas report total, they had 275. So you can see that what we should have got there, and the Canvas report ballot totals, we should have had 277, maybe you're looking at 278, minus the provisional, let's see, 18, anyway, it just, nothing seems to add up here, because when we finally come in, we found that there was 213 total. So let's see what this one is. Is this the, oh, that's what we already were looking at. Okay, go back. So that's this. So essentially here on this same precinct 0105, I think it's this one, 010 is the one we're looking at. See, it says 257 is the total ballots cast. And so again, what we did was we looked at the signature roster. That's how many people supposedly signed in, and all they did was check them off. And by the way, the signature sign-in thing, like if anybody signed, we could not, they wouldn't let us copy that. So we had to do that by hand. And so we did this project where we looked at 85 precincts, got the tapes, got the sign-in roster, and then essentially here, okay, this thing here, the page number, the total, column 1 and column 2, this is the signature pages. So we went in and counted these. So 213. Checked it 3 times. Sign-in roster index. So we got 213 people signing in. Yeah, so this is the problem with this. You can see that's hard to even figure this out. And what we found was that even the reports that were brought in, which they call the ballot statements, those are the statements that the election work. Okay, here's the ballot statement. Let's take a look at that. Open a new tab. Okay, yeah, here's what I was looking for. So let's turn this around. So here, this is what the election worker would fill out. And you can see here, the number of ballots received was 510. Number of used ballots, 229. Voted ballots, 259. Provisionals and spoiled. But when they add these up, it doesn't match. So they said one provisional ballot signature was missing. The number total was 277. And then they had the blue roster pages, the white roster, the pink roster, and peach roster. Now, the white roster is the main set of voters. The pink roster was for provisional voting, and peach roster was for people, I believe, that were just recently, hadn't voted recently and that were in danger of being, eliminated from the rolls. And so they got here 278. We bring that in. Here's a number of voted ballots, 277. So, one provisional ballot signature was missing. How does that number of voted ballots, you'd think that this would be bigger than the total number of signatures. It doesn't make any sense to me. So remember this, 278 is the total signatures, and they say 277 was the number of voted ballots. And now we go back here and let's just look exactly at the polling tapes. For here, it's this middle one, 257. 257 compared to 277. 257. Okay, so that means that we had a few that weren't included in this right away. That makes some sense because check it out. we have 18 provisionals. They're not going to be included in that tape, because that tape only includes the non-provisional ballots. Okay, it doesn't include the spoiled ballots either. So, but we have 18 so it should be 278 minus 18, which would be 260. If this was correct, total number of signatures minus the 18, we should have 260. They say the number of voted ballots was 259. They're missing one. They said that maybe there was an additional provisional ballot. I think that's what they mean here. So there would be 259 because these should be 19. So 259, let's remember that. Now let's go back here to the tape. We have 257. There's 2 more ballots missing. All right. So this was the kind of stuff we found, and it was very hard to make sense of this. What we decided was that what they were doing, and I could not get a straight answer from them in terms of the difference here between what you see here, which is 257, and what the ballot statement says, which should be 259 or maybe 260. So we're off by 2 or 3 ballots here. Now, if you kept doing that all the time, you'd be off by quite a bit. And so we were getting pretty concerned as we look at that. So if we say, if we go and say, all right, 259, so we're off by about 2 ballots. 2 divided by 259. What is the percentage times 100? Not too much. It's less than 1%. So this one didn't turn out too bad. Some of the other ones that we did were a lot worse. And this is just, this is the very first one that we looked at, and you can see it's wrong from the get-go. Nothing matches. And this is why getting these because these polling tapes are the election night results. These polling tapes, election night results, 257. Now, if we go back and look at here, what this says, instead of 257, that 275 people voted. Now, does that make any sense? Somewhat, because the total signatures were 278. We had 3 spoiled ballots, maybe, you know, maybe that makes some sense, about 275 eventually came through. That's way different than the 257. And this was the problem that we first found when we were trying to make sense of matching these numbers up. Because you can see here on the election night scan from this precinct, we got 257. In the final report, the number of ballots cast from the polling place, they said, was 275. Okay, so 275 minus 257, just from the 2 things that we happen to know, that's the 18. So that could be the provisional ballots that came in later makes this up. But we didn't always, you know, unless you go back and get the signature page, you know, if you just look at these tapes in San Diego, where again, they have not been scanning in the precinct. They have been scanning in the central office. So they bring the ballots back, ballot statement. This is what the people try to figure out. So it's actually necessary to get these numbers here of how many people voted in the precinct, how many were provisionals, to try to match it up to the tapes and try to match it up to the roster and try to match it up to the this list. This is the segment of the cast vote record list. This is what it looks like. So basically they're saying, here's the precinct. Let's go down here to where, yeah, so we have an actual race here. Here's McCain-Palin, all right? So it's area 37, which is all San Diego. This is a short precinct number, which is that. And this is the longer precinct designator, which includes the name. And then this is, can't remember what that is, 290-125, not sure. And then this is the name of, this is like the race designator. And then this is the common name for the race. And then this is the candidate number. And this is like the common name for the candidate. This is the polling place, like where, what kind of ballots they are. There's polling, mail, and total. And then we have, you can see here, in the polling place 157 for that. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. 157 from the polling place for McCain-Palin. We could go back to these things here, and we could see McCain-Palin has 149. This is 105010. Again, this is 105010. Polling place total for this candidate, 157. We look at the sequence number, we see 149, off by 8. And so it's very, very hard. And the reason is because those ballots have been pulled out, the 18. Maybe there was 8 here voting in the provisionals later. And those later provisionals are included in this. They don't break out the provisionals here. The ones that were brought in and done at the polling place, so those are changed. So I hope that this kind of explains it a little bit, what we did, and it was, you know, it was some work. We tried to get everything together for, like, here is the ballots. This was basically from the ballot statement, what they said on the ballot statement, because the total polls ballots 277. That should match this number, 277. This is item 8. This is the total number of voted ballots. That's what we're trying to look for. That's right there. Total signatures, 278, off by 1. All right. And then the canvass report total was 275. This was reported on the election canvass report, 275. Does that make sense? The final election canvass report, polling, 275. And so this was the challenge, to try to match these numbers up and put them in this thing here to try to figure it out. Then the signatures, when we went back to these signature pages, which again, we could not show you the signatures because they would not let us scan these pages. So we had to just go in and count them. And so you can see we had total non-provisional 261. That doesn't match either. Total voted ballots counted from the ballot box 259. The scanned ballots were 257. Unscanned 2. Why not? You know, we thought there was 4 that were missing. So this is kind of like why this going in this direction was pretty challenging. And it's interesting that in the first scan, you know, when we look at these tapes, this was the scan from election night. They bring the ballots in, but what they do is they pull out any of the provisionals or anything that might be wrinkled or damaged in any way. They're not included in this list of tapes. But, you know, if you're now, I will say that now we don't get the tapes. I guess I should reshare that because what now we're not getting these tapes. Okay, so these tapes here, somebody's making extra background noise, so I'm going to mute everybody just to make sure that we're not getting any noise. Okay, so good. So I know that there's some projects. I see that Daniel Wolf is on the phone, on the line. These were the polling tapes that we were getting in San Diego in 2008. This was the 2008 election. And we did not get these at the precinct though, because again, they would come into the central office and you know, basically process all the ballots at once. You know, in the central office, they would have, in the last election, 160 people there on separate machines, and they would have them all, in fact, let me see if I have, I do have a picture from recently, and I have some videos that I could show you. I'll share some of these over here on this screen. So this is basically they would bring in, this was later. This is when they were trying to match things up. Let me just see what else I have here. Oh, this was all the ballots once they were sealed and we could not get to them. This was the central tabulator room, and we noticed that they had a voting machine here so they could actually basically add votes in at their, whenever they wanted to. I'm just had some pictures here that I had of them. Let me see if I can find it before I put it up there. That was where the whole room was filled with machines. Here it is. This is on the Facebook page. This was back in like 2008, and this was in their other facility. So each one of these people, you can see here, had a voting machine from that was used to be used in the precinct. They would hand feed these ballots one at a time to these little scanners, really wimpy little scanners. So they had 160 people here, 16 teams of 10. And so they would get these done. Each person would do approximately 8 to 10 precincts that night. And it would take them about many hours over the night, but they would get it done. The tape that we looked at was the tape from this machine. So they would do the zero tape, and then the tape would come out. So we couldn't get it at the precinct. We had to go back to the central office and get the tape there. And that, and then they would bring the little cards back into the room. They would have these other machines sitting there, and this is the old way of doing it. They would take the cards from those other machines, insert them into these machines, and that would upload the data into the central tabulator computer, which is that one over there I showed you a second ago. Let's see if there was any other quick thing I wanted to show you that I had from pictures like that. So that was from quite a while back, but this was when we actually did the accumulation of that data from these tapes. And the problem was, as I'll say again, is that you have the ballot statement, which is actually the number of ballots they claim, which they tend not to get these to match. So they have 510 and they've got 509. This is on the very first one that we're looking at. Let's take another example real quick, because unfortunately let's see here. Oh, I know how I have to look at it. Just a quick second so I can get the Well, I guess I don't have it. I think it's 18 now. I'll bring that over. So essentially, I think I went up to, the next one was maybe 18. Let's see if that brings anything up. They'll probably say nothing. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I thought that today the focus was going to be on monitoring early voting. Are you going to get to that?
Yeah. Okay. So I did try to mention that a little bit, but I did want to say this because you mentioned you were going to look at the polling tapes, and I wanted to make sure that you could see what we had tried before and the challenges of trying to match these numbers up. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do that right now. I'm going to go over to non-sharing now so we can see each other, and let's talk about that. So the first thing that I can announce is that I did go to one of the early voting centers. They have the Dominion, all new stuff in San Diego. They have basically about 50 ballot marking devices in these polling centers, and they do not scan them there. They just can carry the ballots in. There's no poll tapes to get at that point. They're going to be all brought into the central office. There's very little that people can do other than just visit those and try to see what's going on. And like I said, Harvey went yesterday morning, and he found that they had started putting in those mistaking the number of what they were putting in. As I was showing you in a second ago, they used two different numbers here. They use like number 0002, and that's their sequence number. And then they also have the precinct number. And what they were doing is they were mixing those up and misprogramming. So the very first ballots, about 30 to 60 ballots, they had to bring them, reprogram them, and they said they're going to have to seek out those voters and try to get them to vote again. We couldn't actually see them because they wouldn't let us see them. So that's the kind of thing that we could do right now. And anybody can go and look at any of these early voting centers to see what's going on. And also, I think also what can be done is to go in and look at them scanning. If they are scanning, like I just showed you, they may be doing scanning of the vote by mail ballots. They started that 10 days earlier. And in San Diego was just like what I just showed you, where they were pushing the ballots through the machine. Now they're going to be scanning those hand-marked paper ballots. There really isn't much you can do except just to look at them and see that what they're doing, because they're not going to give you any data yet until after the election, is over. So so let's talk about that. Emily, what do you want to investigate in terms of the early oversight?
Well, I'm thinking, and in California, where you and I both are,
yeah,
early voting is about to end because it's about to be election day. But in other states, early voting is just starting or about to start, who are doing later primaries. And I think there probably are people who would be willing to go in and observe, but they don't really know what to look for or how to tell when they see something, whether it's the way it's supposed to be or out of the ordinary. And it's a lot easier to get people to go in and monitor if we can give them really clear instructions about what to look for, what to do if they see something they have questions about, how to know whether something is of concern or not, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so of course, what you want to look for is big picture. Are they open? Do they have long lines? We didn't see any lines. I mean, they were so prepared for the early voting. It was quite remarkable, except for that case that Harvey was talking about. For me, I just wanted to find out, what they were doing, because everything now is new. In that case where they did find the screw up, and you almost can't predict this stuff. I mean, I would not be able to predict, before yesterday happened, that they were going to put in the wrong numbers and then have to have 30 ballots that were screwed up. So you kind of have to sort of be there and just wait for anything to happen, and maybe nothing. And sometimes it's kind of like, the CHP on the side of the road. Guess what? Everybody goes the speed limit when they go by him. So he thinks everybody goes the speed limit all the time. I've got something to tell you. Most of the time, people are not driving the speed limit, but the CHPs, maybe they don't know that too much. So when you're there, you may not see too much bad stuff going on because everything's going, because you're there. And so it's still really important that people are there watching and that they know that we're there watching, even if we don't catch them doing anything wrong. That's pretty important to understand.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so let's say we had volunteers going out to watch early voting on the idea that just being there watching can help things be done according to the rules. And then they see something that they are concerned about. What would you recommend they do?
I think because the way things work, you pretty much have to in real time try to follow it up as much as you can yourself. So when Harvey, as an example, saw that they were having trouble with these first 30 and they were misprogrammed, first of all, he was there first thing in the morning, which was good. And they just started early voting here in San Diego on Saturday. So it hasn't been going on very long. And then he went and followed those up and followed them to the central office to see how they were going to handle it. So basically, you have to be kind of versatile in saying, okay, something is screwed up. It's probably not going to work to think about, okay, well, yeah, he called me and said, hey, this is happening, and we talked about it. And so, having other people that you're working in your working group on your team for that area, pretty important, so you can talk to each other and try to see what the best course of action would be. And we thought, well, he should, if he can, follow those ballots to the central office and then see what they're gonna do there. And so now we have this as an action item for us to follow up on those ballots to try to find out, okay, well, how did they handle these? And so you kind of have to be ready to, and this is the case for all the oversight that we've done in other areas too, where, every area is different, every place is different. Oh, one other thing that I did interact with was Sonoma County, and I think this is also the case, Emily, in San Mateo County. They were planning to use, or they still were planning to use, their computerized random number selection. And I talked to the person there, and I impressed on her that we would prefer if they used 10-sided dice and a list, because that's the easiest way to follow. Number one, you can verify that all the precincts are on the list. Number two, there's no computer. You don't have to verify the software or anything. They're just rolling dice. As long as they follow the procedure of, they roll the dice for every digit, and then if it doesn't fit within the range, they have to re-roll the dice. Now, sometimes with the dice, you can have, just to go into this a little bit more, you can have, you have different colors for the different digits. So if you have, like, this is the ones digit, this is the tens, the hundreds, thousands. But if you don't need 10 digits for your thousands, you can make all the odd ones be 0 and all the evens be 1 or something like that. And that way you're splitting this up in half and you're more likely to fit within the space, something of that nature. But what you don't want to have them do, which is what San Diego was doing, is they said, oh, well, our range was 1,535. And they would start down here and they would pick a ping pong ball out of 10 ping pong balls. And they would pick, let's say, a 6. Let's say this was 7. And let's say this was an 8. 8, 7, 6. They go, oh, well, that doesn't fit within the 1535. So let's just call that an 8, 7, 6. We don't need to roll the other one because we know that this one won't fit in the range. And so why should we waste our time? Well, it turns out that that's incorrect. What you have to do is you have to roll another digit, and sometimes it's going to turn out to be, say, a 1. And then you have to throw it out and start over. If it turns out to be the 0, then you can take it.
Hey, Ray, I have a question.
Yeah.
For you. This is Lynn.
Okay.
So until recently, North Carolina didn't do a dice roll. They just would publish the random selection that they had made. And it took one person to change it. I went there, pushed them to see the process. They didn't roll 10-sided dice. They had some sort of, procedure that they used, some sort of algorithm that was written. And so I pushed them and got them to use the 10-sided dice. And they also, I've asked them, and they did this with the last election, also published the computer program that they used, that algorithm, so that we were able to enter in the numbers at the public random dice roll, and it would spit out the same precincts that they got.
Right.
So,
as long as you start with that seed, as long as the seed is random, then you can use a random number generator to generate the rest of them, and that's okay.
Right. And they were using a random number generator, but nothing that they could prove that there was some sort of randomness about it. So I guess what I would say to people who want to go and observe, I think the first thing is to call your state board or your county board or whoever is doing it and ask them if you can be there for it. And chances are the process that they're using is probably going to be flawed, and you're probably going to have to push back. But if they do that now for the primary, it only took one election for me to change it, and North Carolina pushes back pretty hard. So I was actually surprised.
Sometimes they are cooperative like that. I had some counties I went to in the state here. I went to San Bernardino, and I said, that's not good the way you're choosing the numbers. And they said, okay, we'll change it. Done. And they didn't mind.
They pushed back pretty hard.
Okay.
But I brought them 10-sided dice, asked them to use it. The lawyer, there was a lot to happen, but eventually I kind of convinced them that unless they are proving to the public that this is random, what ends up happening is people were asking me, so do you think these are really chosen at random? And I would say, I think they were, but I have no way of proving it. And so I explained to them that if they could use a method that would prove that it's random, then when people say, do you really think it's random? I can say, yeah, I was there. I put the numbers in my own code, and yes, they are truly random. And that gives more confidence.
Of course. What they're doing. And so here's an example of a time when I was watching this. I was at San Luis Obispo County, and I said, I want to observe. And there was a big fight over whether my camera could be in there, so I didn't get to record this. But they ended up bringing out a bowl, with all these little strips of paper in there. Big bowl with little piece of paper on each one was the precinct number. And I says, well, how do I know they're all in the bowl? And they said, oh, they are. You can trust us for that. I said, no, I want to make sure they're all in there. They go, really? You're going to force us to put that? I said, well, the easier thing is just have a list and roll dice. But if you want to do it this way, then I have to check them.
Yeah.
So then we took all the pieces of paper out and put them out in order to make sure that they were there. And they were missing 3 of them.
Right.
And then they had, egg on their face, and they were more cooperative. But basically the number in the bowl kind of thing is easy to manipulate. It's not a good method. Mm-hmm. The other thing I've seen is they've used like poker chips with numbers on them, and they would weigh them to show that they're the same. There's so many in there, and it was hard to verify that as well. Anyway,
so I think citizens could go and just the argument of, hey, you can do something really small that costs your county or your state literally nothing extra.
Yeah. That's a really good,
I think, voter confidence.
I think a very effective, this is the thing, is that how can you be the most effective with your time? How can you just, volunteer, go in and look at the right thing, and, like you did, Lynn, where you said, and you hit them exactly the right way, where you're saying, you know, okay, I don't believe that that's random. And then they have to try to explain it. The trouble that we had, like with the proposal of doing these polling tapes, is that they're all off. And try as we might to get them to match, we still had this difference. And, you know, yeah, they can explain it. But, you know, basically, even though we had the polling tapes and we reviewed them, we really couldn't get traction on understanding what was going on, because we didn't have the final. And this was the same for the manual tally, because they don't include, you know, they don't include all the rest of the vote by mails in there either. At least they weren't. Well, the good news that we just heard from San Diego is that they are going to be able to produce, according to Michael Vu, the full batch by batch report prior to the random draw, he says. So now what's happened is this has been about 10 years of battle. No, more than that, since 2008. So 12 years of pushing on them to try to get this batch report. It's taken 12 years. And so finally we're getting it. We hope. So there is, you know, in San Diego, the where they're running it, there isn't a whole lot that you can do at the, like I said, go in. It's excellent to go in and see what's there, and it's super important for somebody to show up at these places and say, I'm an observer and I'm just checking out what's going on here. You don't have to.
Right. And I think most people aren't doing that. You know, when I showed up, they said, what do you mean you're here? No one ever has come to watch it.
I know.
And I had this circular argument with them because they won't post when it's going to be. I just kept nagging them about it. And they said, well, no one's interested in it. And I said, well, nobody knows about it. Well, no one's called to other than you to say you want to see it. I said, well, because nobody else knows it. It was just this
they
circular
have
argument.
tried to make it secret. The audits, they don't want anyone to know about it, because they know that basically that's going to hold their feet to the fire if we watch it carefully enough.
Right. They won't publish it. And that's my next fight. They won't publish when they're going to do it. They'll tell me the night before, but that's not really enough time for me to distribute it.
They're supposed to give you notice of at least, you know, like 3 days or something. It's probably in the law land now. Are you?
Oh, yeah, I went to the lawyer. They said that for a meeting, they have to notice it 48 hours beforehand, but this wasn't considered a meeting. It was in some other part of the statute where it's considered, you know, some other name that they thought of. But going back to the poll tapes, so say I am able to get people in North Carolina, at least some people, to photograph those poll tapes. What are we doing with them after that? And do you need all the poll tapes in order to verify whatever it is you're trying to verify?
Well, I know I see Daniel Wolf is on there, and I know they have some sort of new app where it's making it easier to collect this stuff. What I found was that I could look at these poll tapes later easily enough just by going into the central office. And in San Diego, they did not have them on the door. So that was the only way we could get them. And so it didn't really help to have people with an app here. Now they don't have any poll tapes. So there is no need for an app here. Now in other areas, say North Carolina, I don't know what the procedure is going to be, but there might be a way to look at these poll tapes. And as I showed you, you can look at some of the information, and you know, we were very disappointed that these numbers were so far off. I mean, that what we wanted to see was, okay, we got so many ballots coming in at this precinct, and we see them being scanned. You know, we thought it was going to be simple, and what we found was that almost not only 15% of the time did the numbers actually all match up, and all the rest of the time, 85% of the time, we couldn't get them to match up at all. And so it was a difficult thing to do. So Daniel, why don't you tell us what's the plan over there? Because I mean, I tell you what, I went up on this, and it's not an easy thing. What do you guys plan?
I've got some feedback. I've got to turn off.
Yeah, turn off your speaker or whatever you got there.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, that sounds good.
Damn thing.
Still.
Now it's going through my phone. Hang on, I'm so sorry. I'll just turn my phone off.
Sounds like you're in the middle of a echo chamber.
Okay, it's time to turn it off once in a while anyway.
Okay, there you go. That sounds clear. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Oh, no, okay, now all the other devices are off. What Ray was referring to was our Actual Vote app. You can actually go straight to it if you type in www or whatever, actual, ACTUAL .vote. That's a URL that takes you right to our instruction page. We are at this stage in the enterprise of providing a centralized location for all poll tapes around the country. Our Actual Vote app will allow people, if once they download it, right now on an iPhone, we're providing a workaround for Android right now that will provide a central repository. Basically you download the app, you shoot a video of the poll tape at the polling center or polling place or at the central headquarters, wherever it's generated. It's as close to the time of generation as possible, because of course that reduces the opportunity for changing something out during the chain of custody. And then the ones that are the pictures that are taken with our app go into our website, where they can then be tagged in a crowdsourcing method with precinct number, location, that sort of thing. So it makes them searchable, so that anybody can then go in and search for poll tapes for precincts in districts that they have an interest in. And they can do the calculations. At this point, there's no automation. We would like, this may take version 3.0 before we get there, but we're thinking hard about being able to do OCR on the tapes, so that stuff is available instantly. That's a reach. That's a real reach, but that's our hope. The idea here is not just to preserve the tapes. That's important. Not just to make it possible for people like ourselves to look at the tapes and do all the addition and everything, but to make it easy enough for mass numbers of tapes to be produced and mass numbers of tapes to be analyzed, so that parties in interest, not just people who care about the system, but people who have private personal interest in making sure that the results are correct, that is to say candidates especially. If a candidate is in a close race, he or she can say, let's look at the poll tapes and see what we can find. And if there's any problem there, then they have an incentive, to go to court to deal with it. We ourselves would have to go shopping for someone to put up the money, but they've already hopefully got the incentive to find the money to mount a lawsuit if it takes it, or at least to complain bitterly with the threat of a lawsuit because they have standing for it, and therefore push the process, in a very powerful way. Eventually, we want to go to, working. Hopefully, eventually, will be within the next few months, actually analyzing the numbers that go into producing the poll tapes, i.e., what's the integrity of the polling place itself. But that's another subject right now. That's what we're planning to do with polling tapes, and everybody. We're waiting on, tenterhooks for Apple to announce that it is now out on the Apple Store. We're getting ready for Super Tuesday, and it's nail-biting time for the app to be ready. But we've got this workaround in case it's not ready, so that there's a central repository for the tapes.
Okay. So let me verify a couple of things about what you said. So you are the people. Does the app? What do they do? Just shine their video camera over the poll tape and sort of record it as they go down? Is that the practice?
Yeah, basically, we're providing some instructions for clarity. But basically, yeah, you just hold it parallel, start at the top, and just move slowly down so that we get nice focused images. And at the end, you take your finger off and you either retake it, you know, or you say use it, and it goes up onto our website. And that's the end of their duty. They do it for as many tapes as are there.
Okay, so let me just, from my point of view, since I did do some of this, if I were going to do that, let's say I was a candidate that wanted to really look at the poll tapes, then you can go into the office and ask them for all of the poll tapes, and you can look at them all. And so that you don't have to rely upon people collecting them from a thing. Now, maybe it might be better, let me take and argue your point of view, that if you went to the polling place and you saw the ones on the door at that night, then maybe those would be different from the ones that they have to maintain. But they're supposed to have to take those poll tapes back in and keep them. So you can go in and just say, okay, well, look, I want to look at all your poll tapes. You can go in there and look at them all. So if you're a candidate that's really interested in figuring out, you know, whether you win or lost, then you can look at the poll tapes, and you know, you can look at the audit logs and everything else that they have. They have a little packet. I should have taken pictures of this stuff when I was doing it. But
Hey, could you guys give that, it's, you said actual.
actual.vote. I think it was actual.vote, right, Daniel?
Yes, I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in other areas, it might be like San Diego, as I said, they don't have poll tapes on the door. And so everything is going through the central tabulator, and you're just going to get that report. So we kind of are missing out on that.
Yeah, hang on, Ray. On that point, I was reviewing the law a few days ago.
Yeah.
And the law says that doesn't mean they're obeying the law, but the law does say that if the votes are counted in the polling place, they have to post a tape and leave it up for at least 48 hours.
Yeah, well, they're not counting the votes in the polling place.
Right. No. If they're not counting them there, they're obviously going to.
Yeah. So they're getting
Is
around.
that a state law or federal?
That's be a state.
It's a state.
That'll be state law. So it'll be different in each state. But normally they had, because I used to do this, it was one of the first like volunteer things I did trying to get into the election integrity world. And they said, yeah, you know, do a good thing. Go out to your local polling place and then write down all the numbers. And I did. It was a lot of work. And then I brought them back and nobody cared. It's like no one was doing anything with them. And so I thought, gee, I was just kind of, you know, then I said, well, let's try that. And that's what I showed you in 2008. We tried it. And how it was, we only did a 5% sample, but we tried to rigorously look at all of the numbers in that 5% sample. And it was such a mess. And we made a report. I'll give you the report. I'll circulate the report on the list that we made back from that time. It was kind of frustrating. The other thing I noticed was that the media really didn't care either. They would not cover any kind of election, you know, issue because they did not want to spark any kind of like, you know, voter non-confidence.
Yeah. Ray, may I speak to this just a moment?
Oh, okay.
One of the reasons that I like your going back to your California Highway Patrol.
Yeah, that's important. That's important.
One of the reasons that we're doing it the way we're doing it is so that it is obvious to everybody in every election administration that as far as they know, there are people downloading these poll tapes, you know, and there is a place where it can be looked at with ease. And even if candidates are not coming in to look at the poll tapes, it is very possible that they are sitting behind the corner looking at the poll tapes, you know, and because it's crowdsourced.
That's always, you know, and so it's diversity of tactics. I support that. Exactly. I'm not trying to say it shouldn't be done. I just want to, because also the other thing that we found was that like when we scanned these, a lot of times we couldn't read them. I mean, they would jam or they would double print and, oh, that was horrible.
Yeah.
And so
there'll be all of that.
But what we
you know,
did, well, I'll tell you what we did find was that the audit log of the computer and the poll tapes matched 100%. So there wasn't any loss between when they scanned it and when it went into the computer, because there was a little bit of a leap of faith there that when they scanned it and they had to bring back that little media card, plug it in and download the results. So I didn't have that in my list of things I showed you earlier, but we did look at the audit log to see where it says, you know, reading so many ballots in, and that's all you could see. It would not show you the totals in the audit log, just how many ballots would come in. So it was just a numbers thing of counting. Now, with the rise of ballot image auditing that we're doing, where we're going to be looking at all the ballot images, what we want to get is like the electronic version of the poll book, where we know how many people voted, so we can compare that with how many ballots were scanned, because that's kind of a good number to do. And none of these other like risk limiting audits and so forth even include that step. So for right now, let's just summarize real quick what people can do immediately. Is you can go to your local early voting place, and then when it's election day, visit your own polling place. And I recommend shutting it down. So you go in just before the end of the election day at 7:55 and say, I'm here to observe you guys close the polling place. It's very, very interesting. And you just say, like, you can use whatever you want, election scrutineers or citizens oversight or whatever name you want to dream up. And I'm here to observe your closing. They go, oh, we wish, usually I hear this, we wish more people would do this because we think it's a really good thing to be watching the closing. Do you do this in all precincts? I'm going, no, we don't do it in all precincts. So it is a really good thing to watch, you know, how are they closing? Because this is when the potential shenanigans could happen, is that closing of the polling place. And then after that, the next big step is you know, they're running it through. You can see what they're doing in terms of all the scanning and how they're handling things. Of course, signature comparisons with the vote by mail ballots, and then how do they handle the audits? And so those are really the big three areas, I guess, is at the polling place and shutting it down, the scanning and the processing prior to the audit, and then the audit itself. Those are sort of the big three areas. Okay, so we've gone long enough, and I think I covered some of the things I wanted to cover. Any more questions or last minute things we want to cover? Okay, good. Well, thanks everybody for attending, and hopefully this will be helpful. I'll make a YouTube out of it and let other people view it and cut off the first part of when we're screwing around. But thanks again for attending, and keep the energy up. We have this Super Tuesday coming up, and then audits. We've made a list, and hopefully we can share that with you, Emily, or we can share together to make sure that we're coordinating when the audits are happening. Some of the random tallies happen right away in many places. I guess, you know what, let's just extend this just for a second. And let me share this one issue here, which is and I'll share this around with everybody on the list, but we have a Google Doc that we have prepared, which is okay, that's not it. And here it is, I think. No, that's not it either. Okay, so maybe I can't find it right now. But essentially, what it is the list of audit locations and when their time is. So I'll send that on the list. I can't find it right now, but it's a Google Doc that we can work on together, and it's when the meetings are and which volunteers are attending. And it can be kind of, we can share that, Emily, to make sure that we're all on the same page. But Susan Schneider was doing phone calling with these various districts to make sure that we had the times, because it does take that, as Lynn was saying. They don't always publicize things, so we have to be Yeah, it's for California. So that list is for California mainly right now is what we're trying to coordinate. The other areas, I know Florida is coming up pretty soon, and we've always tried to do that one as well. That one we haven't started working on yet, but it is, yeah, the election is 3/17, and they take a little bit longer to do their manual tally because they do it at the end after certification. So they start their manual tally in a lot of counties. They only choose one contest per county to audit randomly, and usually they choose some race that's irrelevant. And then also if there's some race that is really close and they have to do a machine recount, they don't do the audits at all. So it's really bad that way. And so we have already done that in the past and tried to get people to help do that. And we have had some success, and I've also gone there and gone to them myself. And I'm very good at watching these things and trying to, stump the professor. So I tend to be able to find things. And it's been good. It's been interesting. The more people we can do, like, as you say, the CHP, everybody drives a speed limit. We need to keep people with their eyes open and watching. So I'll circulate those on the list after the meeting. All right.
Hey,
Okay.
hey Ray, I have one thing to say. When we're getting volunteers to go to their boards of elections and ask for these things, it's pretty intimidating because these elections officials, I think, is the ones that I've met, they act as though it's their election. And I think what our volunteers should remind them is very politely, well, these are the people's elections. And you serve the public,
Right.
and we have a right to understand what's going on.
Yeah, you would think they would do that, but that's the whole idea of citizens oversight too. Is that the concept is that a lot of these election officials, they think they're on top of it. The view is that the citizens are in control. We're in a democracy, and actually we're the only ones that can be trusted with our own elections, and we have to be there to watch it because we can't trust the elections officials. We can't trust the vendors. We can trust no one except for ourselves. The public is responsible. More than any other time, we have to be responsible for our own elections. We're all on that same page because we're here talking. But you're right, is that these election officials, if they can be reminded like that, that's a great idea to say, I'm volunteering, I'm doing, observing,
Right.
observer, and a lot of times they're very good. Orange County has a little program for observers where they train you and they give you a video and they give you a tour, and some of these places have been very, very good. So it isn't always bad. I'd say more than half of the time I've had a very, very good experience with the election officials, really wanting to do it, calling me back, making sure that they were doing the right thing, etc. So
Right. And I guess the other thing is, I feel like they feel very threatened when people come in. At least the ones I've met feel very threatened when you want to come in and observe. And what I said to them was, look, I don't distrust you personally. I trust you as a person. But what happens when you move to another job and somebody else is in that position? I need to trust the process, not the person. We trust our elections officials, but people are fallible and we need to trust the process. And so show us the process, and we're going to sit here and make sure you're following the process.
Yeah, and that's I love that. And I also say trust but verify, because the right, even the Reagan supporters like that one because he said it. And so this is kind of the way we have to be. Yeah, sure, we trust you, but we want to verify that everything's going right. What we're up against here is not so much that they're making like actively trying to commit fraud or something. What they're doing is maybe trying to fix something and incorrectly fixing it. Making mistakes like that happens. And so it's making mistakes. It's maybe there is someone who's been blackmailed, who is a worker who might be paid or something. you know, you never can tell. So it's important for us to be there. Trust me, you're doing the right thing by being involved with election integrity. This is probably the most important single thing we can do as you know, citizens in our democracy, is to watch these elections. And now we finally have some traction where people are realizing, yes, we do need to watch these because bad things are happening. We see Iowa, we see, you know, these other elections what they've downplayed, but it has been something that I think is finally getting a little bit more under control. We're getting it under control, and but it's like a balloon. We get one part, squeeze it, it pops somewhere else out. So we always got to be on our toes, watching what's happened, being able to quickly negotiate between different things. Okay, I think we've got to end the meeting now because we've gone on for too long. But thank you all for attending, and I'll try to shorten it up by deleting anything that wasn't that productive in the video. Okay, thank you, and bye now.